Christopher Walsh, our special guest, and the coach now getting his headsets on. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Good, good. Just visiting with Christopher. We were talking about, from our standpoint, since we both had the pleasure of working collegiate events and pro events, the difference between the two from a media standpoint, how I won't jump on an 18-year-old kid. I just won't do it. But, you know, a pro who's getting all these millions and he has a case of the dropsies, you mention it. How about coaching-wise? How different is your approach, collegiate versus the NFL?
Well, I didn't think it was a whole lot different either way. You know,
okay.
Pro players really want to play well. They have a tremendous amount of respect for any coach that they have who can teach them and enhance their chances of playing well so they can make more money, so they can play for longer. So I really, didn't see it much different, coaching, professional players. I think the biggest difference is when you're in college, you're really trying to develop the total person.
The whole person, yeah.
You're trying to develop the player, the student, the value of getting an education and developing a career off the field, building value for yourself by having good character, making good choices and decisions about things that you do and you don't do. I think in the NFL, once you pay a guy, there's not a lot that you can do in terms of influencing those things. Although, we did some things in Miami when I was there to try to help the players. We put in guys could go to college and get their education, and Wayne was good. Wayne Huizinga was good about helping that. And we did some, education programs to help our players have a better chance to be successful in life. So I think you can do it, there too. I just think that sometimes the players are what they are by that age, when they get 25, 30 years old.
Interesting. Christopher, why don't you jump in and throw a question in the coach's direction?
Sure. South Carolina, obviously this week, you're facing a quarterback that you probably don't have a lot of game film on. And I'm wondering in the preparation, how do you kind of work around that in getting ready for someone?
Well, we saw the guy play last week, and he played really, really well last week. And he made all the throws and did all the stuff that, they had done in their offense previously. So you couldn't tell if you watched the film and you really watched the guy play that they really missed a beat relative to who the quarterback was. This guy looks really talented. He's very accurate with the ball. He made quick decisions. They've got some pretty good skill guys. So I don't really think there's a lot of difference in the two players, and that's no disrespect to their starter that they lost the first game because he was an experienced player and a good player, but this player looked like a good player to me.
Jake Bentley, of course, the first guy who went down in their opener against North Carolina. Helinski was, after all, the high school player of the year, so we're not talking about a piece of chopped liver here.
And he's a good passer, and he's smart, and I think he's from California, where those guys kind of grow up with passing coaches and lots of 7-on-7, so they understand coverage, and so he looks like mature beyond his years in terms of his experience in playing.
Coach, standing to your right is a visitor here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill. He has a question for you. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Coach.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Just a question. Who's a current influencer in your life, and how are they influencing you today?
A current influence in my life? I'm influenced by all people and all people that I have relationships with all over the place. I've got really good friends, players on the team. I learn things from players on the team all the time. I learn about their background, why they are the way they are, what can we do to help fix them, and things that I learn. I would be a lot better parent now than I was, 30 years ago because of some of the experiences and relationships that I've had with players and, people that I've learned from. But I think my greatest mentors and people that really sort of set me off, in a way that on the path that I'm on is, really probably my high school coach, my college coach, Don James. My parents were really instrumental. George Perlis. I've had some great mentors like Bill Belichick. So professionally I have them and personally I have them. But personally I kind of learn from everybody around me. Terry's been really influential in, telling me things that you don't really realize about yourself that you need to change and you need to fix. And So there's just so many people. I couldn't just point out one person and say that's really been an influence on me. I read books all the time, so I'm always trying to read about how you can do better. And, the obstacle is the way. There's a tremendous lesson in, that type of thing. So there's just so many. I can't just pick out one person.
I might be prying here. I'm just kind of curious. When you and Miss Terry are at the lake and you got friends come over, whether you're sitting on the dock, going out on the boat, whatever, do you guys talk about everything but football? I mean, do they make sure to not bring up football and you talk about everything else but?
I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable about talking about football. There's a lot of great football fans. They're interested in football. They're interested in things that happen in sports. We talk about sports. We talk about, things that you learn from sports that you can apply in life.
Right.
Whether it's, pride in performance or, doing things the right way, making choices and decisions, not worrying about your feelings, but choosing to do the things you need to do to be successful. So we talk about all kinds of things. I'm personally interested in talking about something other than football.
Sure.
But I'm not at all upset when people bring it up or want to talk about it, or doesn't upset me at all, because if it's interesting to them, it's interesting to me. So
I hear you.
it's no big deal one way or the other.
One thing that's always interesting to me is the first question of the night from Pee Wee. I'm sure it'll be about the offensive line. The first question brought to you by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig to know what's below. Call 811 or visit online al811.com. Pee Wee, how are you?
Pee Wee,
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
what's going on, man?
It's just been another hot week, Coach.
It has
Tell
been.
me about it.
Coach,
do you
before I
all-
ask
do-
the
do
question
you
or
work
say
outside-
anything else, I want you to understand that I do understand basic math. So when I ask this question, that I understand why he was in the game. But Landon's progression this week at center, how has that been, and has he made good progress on doing the stuff that he needs to do at center?
Well, he hadn't been playing center as much this week because Chris Owens will be back for this game and has been playing center. And we thought Darian Dalcourt played really well in the game, and he has a very bright future. Even though he's a freshman, he's a very bright guy, and he played well in the game. So, we're giving him more reps as a backup. So Landon is probably going to be the third guy, which is what he was in the last game. But Emo has been able to practice. I don't know how much he'll be able to play in the game. But that's not Landon's really natural position. It's just good for us that he's tough and smart and can go in there and, play well enough at center that we have a chance to get by. So, look, I don't think we played well enough start to finish, to beat good teams anywhere on our team. And what I think our players have to understand is whether you play good teams or bad teams, and I get asked what'd you get out of the New Mexico State game or whatever, but your flaws are being exposed. All right, so if you're not playing well, the next team you play, they're seeing, I don't care if it's whether it's passing off a TE game in the offensive line, if it's how you carry the ball, which means you might, be more apt to fumble a certain way, whether it's your eye control on defense, how you cover a guy, so all with how you press the hole as a runner and then cut back or do whatever you're supposed to do. So if you don't do these things right, and they're mostly attention to detail things and technique things, you will get exploited in the future because other people see that you are not doing those things well. So I keep trying to tell our players it doesn't matter who you're playing against. All right, you're being exposed if you're not playing to your best and you're not doing things the right way. So, even like our twos last week, I was really disappointed in the way they played in the game. Basically, they didn't beat New Mexico State. When they were in the game, all right, they didn't beat them. We didn't make any first downs on offense when the offense was in there. We didn't stop them on defense. All right, so, and we're coaching those guys just like we're coaching everybody else because we're not really outcome oriented. If you're outcome oriented, you sit there in your chair and you say, well, you won the game 62-10, what are you complaining about? That's if you're outcome oriented. If you're process oriented, you're saying, Well, but how did we do the things that we need to do to beat a really good team, regardless of who we were playing? And then are we going to go actually focus on those things that we need to do, the vulnerabilities that we created, or are we going to say, we got the outcome that we wanted, so I'm not concerned about those things? Well, if you take that attitude, you're probably not going to improve. You're probably not going to get better. I don't care if it's the offensive line or what position it is or what player it is. So, and I don't think we played from start to finish. I don't think we played a complete game that we could go beat a good team. And I think we're going to play a pretty good team this week.
We are that. Chris?
Well, I kind of want to take the next step in that conversation and talk about the leadership a little bit. Every year we seem to talk about the team taking ownership. And I know it's only 2 games into the season, but do you like the way that the leaders are doing that? And do you have enough guys doing that?
Well, I think there's 2 parts of leadership, and I think people have probably heard me talk about this before. We have guys that are pretty good leaders on our team. I think they're setting good examples. I think they put the team first. I think they try to be disciplined players. I think they're accountable as people. I think they sort of, they want to do the things that leaders need to do to affect other people. But there's 2 parts to that. Mm-hmm. You've got to respond to leadership too. Mm-hmm. So, if you're a young guy and somebody's setting a good example for you and trying to encourage you to do things the right way, it still comes down to your choice as a young player. Do I buy into doing these things this way? Do I see the value for me in the future and how it affects the team if I do or I don't do those things? And, sometimes guys have to have enough maturity, all right, to actually respond to leadership like they should, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I do think we have some guys that are trying to do things the right way. I mean, Dylan Moses is one of the guys on defense that, we'll miss his leadership as much as anything that we'll ever miss from him being a good player, and he is a good player. All right, but his leadership was really, really important to the defense, and and helping other people play well because of the example that he set and the things that he did. But I think that, leaders have to be patient and they have to be positive. And I don't think that everybody just responds to, guys that, kind of get upset because they're not doing things the right way.
Why don't we head back to the telephones and another call on the Academy Sports and Outdoors hotline. Tom is in Hoover, Alabama. Hey, Tom, good evening.
Hello, Eli. Hello, Coach
Hey,
Saban.
Tom.
I hope you and Miss Terry are well.
Hi, thank you. Doing great.
Yes, sir. Coach, I would like to ask you and Eli the same question. Just curious, do you prefer an early start on a home football game or a late start? And Eli, what are your preferences on that? And I will hang up and listen. Thank you.
Well, for me personally, it kind of depends on what I'm doing the next day. If I have some place to be on the West Coast doing an NFL game or something like that, yes, the travel is easier if the game ends at 2:30 in the afternoon, but that's looking at it selfishly. For others, like my family and all, they enjoy the late afternoon and the evening games a little bit more. So after all these years, it really doesn't bother me either way.
Well, I think from my perspective as a coach, you always want to have your players have the mindset that whenever they have to play, 11 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, whenever they have to play, they have to be ready to play. So you got to be ready to play the hand that's dealt you, and you got to be focused and ready to do the best you can, regardless of what your tee-off time is. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So, but I will say this. I like and I have respect for the fact that our game is entertainment for people. And there's a lot of fans that come to our games that are a very instrumental part of our team. They create spirit. They're part of the tradition. It's very important for them. And, we would like for them to be happy that we're playing in an atmosphere that is conducive to them being comfortable and enjoying the game and being excited and cheering and all that. And, as I said, Monday, I think in my press conference, I really appreciate the people who stayed and, kind of went through the heat and, some of the difficult circumstances that we had with some of the fans. last week, in the game. So we do appreciate that. I want the stadium to be full. I want everybody to stay. I want everybody to be there. But I also know that it's not very comfortable sometimes when we play in certain circumstances. Now, from a player standpoint, I don't want to hear any of that. So whenever we play, we play.
Yeah.
And whenever we have to coach, we coach. So I don't personally care from our team standpoint. I do think that, it's difficult on your team when it's this hot for this long and you have to really practice, in this kind of stuff. And how do you ever really get used to it? Woody Hayes used to always say, if you're going to fight in the North Atlantic, you got to train in the North Atlantic. So we'd go outside. If it was snowing, cold, it didn't matter. And I'm saying, well, there's an indoor right there. Why don't we just go in there?
Yeah.
But it didn't matter.
No.
So we're in the South Pacific. But I don't know that you ever get used to 99-degree heat. So you can practice in it as much as you want. I think all you do is run down your players. They're not as hydrated and is not as fresh for the game. Excuse me. So that takes
Certainly.
a little balancing, to be able to manage, how you prepare for games when you get these kind of circumstances. and
What I
conditions.
did find impressive, and I guess it's the tip of the hat as always to your training staff, the medical staff, with only one obvious situation, although who knows, it might have been other things you're aware of, but the guys, with one exception, didn't start dealing with a whole lot of cramping. They looked as though the medical staff stayed on top of them all week for them to be hydrated and the like.
Well, we do a really good job with our players. Our medical staff does a really, really good job with our players. And, we actually give guys IVs at halftime.
Really?
Guys that we know have a history of having cramping circumstances and whatever. So we don't wait till they have them. We go ahead and give them an IV and,
Preventive.
try to prevent them. Sure. And believe it or not, it's easier to manage the players through a game, because we have cool zones on the sideline and all that, and we can, sort of keep them hydrated. They're in, they're out, they rest in between series, you're rotating players. It's much more difficult to manage them through practice, right, than it is, the actual game,
Sure.
I think, for our medical staff. So, but they do a wonderful job, and, we would have a really difficult time if we didn't have a great medical staff.
Coach, we have a visitor right here to our right joining us, and if I'm not mistaken, I recognize your face. You joined us in the broadcast booth a year or so ago, didn't you?
Yes.
It's good to see you again.
You too.
What's your question for the coach?
I know you like to play golf in the off season. How do you manage to win at golf and football?
I don't know who gave you that report. Must have been your dad. But Fuller is one of the great fans that we have. He loves to come to practice. The players really relate to him, and that's who asked me the question. But, my golf game is kind of up and down. So sometimes I play well. J.C. Wells is supposed to be my coach, all right, so he's been fired a few times. So it's not his coaching, it's my lack of execution. But I actually shot like 77 or something one day, and then 89 the next. So I called Zay and fired him, all right, because I went from 77 to 79. So he sent me a text picture of him and Justin and Tiger Woods and Trey Mullinax playing. And he sent me a picture of those guys walking down the fairway, and he said, "I got a new gig. I don't need you."
That's great.
So he fired me.
There you go. Well, Fuller, it's great to see you, man. Thanks for coming by today. Christopher Walsh, why don't you throw another question in the coach's direction?
Well, since we're off the field, I'm going to stick with that. And I noticed that you have stretched your acting chops again with some fun ads. Kind of wondering how they came to light this year, and how do they do that, Duck? I really want to know that.
Half black.
Well, the duck is pretty fascinating. The duck actually is, maybe they wouldn't want me to tell you this, but the duck is actually like a puppet. And there are 4 gentlemen who do the animals in Jurassic Park and some of the other things that actually are pulling the strings on the duck to make the duck, and the duck looks, real. Real.
Sure.
Now, it's a very expensive duck, so I guess it should look real. But these guys are going, like pulling strings and making this thing walk like a normal duck, the same way they do animals in, some of these movies.
Sure. I thought it was a robot.
Like Avatar, they did all that stuff in Avatar. So, but that's how they make the duck work. And when you look at the duck, you really think the duck is real. And when you talk to the duck, you really think the duck is real. So I had a new friend for a while.
Yeah, well, if it walks like a
Probably
duck.
like a lot of my friends they're good friends as long as we win. But
Well, yeah, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. Whatever the story. That's great. Since we're talking about off-the-wall stuff or a little different stuff, let me take a question here from the Nick Saban Show blog. Tim is in Muscle Shoals. Says, Coach, I saw your video series with Armin Katayan this week. It was great to see your close relationship with the players. How close can you get as a friend versus a coach with the players?
Well, I don't think you're really I think you can be close with players, and I think it's a lot like being a parent. I mean, you have fun with your children, you play games with them, you laugh with them, but they also know that, you can correct them and sort of reprimand them in a way to benefit them doing things that are going to help them be successful. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be their buddy. But I don't want them to be uncomfortable around me as their coach or a teacher, and I don't want them to be in an atmosphere where they don't feel like they can have fun.
Sure.
So, there's you kind of draw the line there, but I think everybody knows when, you drop the hammer.
You're the man.
And you say this is how it's going to be, that everybody is going to respond, in a way that you want them to respond, because they have that kind of respect for not only what you're doing, what you're trying to do, right, but the standard that you're setting. And you defined it before, way back when. So it's not like this is something new that changes on a day-to-day basis. And I've asked all the players what their goals and aspirations are and how their behavior sort of matches those goals, and how is it going to affect your chances of having those, achieving those goals in the future. I mean, we had that conversation today with some guys.
And it's never easy, but you got to lay down the law.
No doubt. And you can lay down the law. You don't have to yell and scream about it. You just say, this is how it is.
Got to be emphatic, yeah.
Football has obviously changed over the years, especially in terms of speed, but the one place that I really notice it on your team is special teams. And I'm wondering if your philosophy has changed on that, or is that kind of a new thing?
What has changed? The speed on special teams, or the whole philosophy of special teams?
It's get every fast guy you got on special teams. It seems like, I don't know.
Well, I think that straight line speed on special teams is really, really important, because that's really important on coverage teams, whether it's kickoff coverage or punt coverage. So I think that having good team speed will certainly show up on special teams. But I do think that people don't realize sometimes you have to have matchups on special teams. Like the way people punt the ball now in this spread punt where it's, they're all spread out all across the field almost like a kickoff. You can't really ask a small guy to hold up a big guy, and you can't really ask a big guy to hold up a smaller, quicker guy. So you almost have to match these guys up almost like positions in basketball. The point guard needs to cover the point guard, and the power forward needs to cover the power forward. And when you have a lot of diversity on your team at positions, especially linebacker, tight end, running back, safety, corner, those are the positions that I think can really make a huge impact on special teams. And, Jeff Banks does a really, really good job with our special teams. We've changed philosophically a little bit how we punt. All right, so now we punt with the spread punt. We've always done the NFL-style punt. But what happened was we would never know what the other team was going to do because no one used that punt formation anymore. So we would go into games blind as to what kind of rushes they were going to use. So we had to. So I said, well, we need to change this just so we know how to coach our players and get them ready for a game.
Interesting.
So anyway, but I tell you, South Carolina is really good on special teams. They got a good punt returner. They got a good kickoff return guy. They're really well coached on special teams. They've got good specialists, punter and kicker, both who have experience and have been very effective. So this will be a challenging game for us on special teams.
You brought up a very interesting point I didn't even think of. You were talking about Will Reichard. 17 kickoffs, 16 have been touchbacks. The one went out of bounds. And you said, we got to make sure the guys just don't presume that it's going to be a touchback. And I didn't even stop to think about that. I guess you do have to be alert and not get lulled into a sense of security because the guy's got such a great leg.
Well, what we're trying to emphasize with our players, which we haven't got done very well, is you have to cover every kickoff to the goal line. All right, so we want to see speed down the field, and we want you to cover to the goal line. All right, whether the guy, when you see the returner go like this, all right, a lot of teams are saying, shut it down. I'm not going to return the ball. So they don't want us to see their return so we can go coach our players on their double and five, they're kicking out four, whatever it is. So they shut it down so you can't see what the return is because they know the ball is going to be kicked out of the end zone or the guy knows he's going to fair catch it. So, but when that happens over and over and over, guys start not covering with great speed. Then the guy all of a sudden catches the ball and returns it, and you're not in great position, all right? Because, I stand there and I watch. Here's the ball. Here's the hang time. Where are guys when the guy catches the ball? So the deeper we are when the guy catches the ball based on hang time and where the ball placement is, the better chance we're going to have to cover the kick.
We've got Caleb on the phone, Coach. He's from Hubbardville, Alabama. Hey, hello, Caleb. Good evening, sir.
Hello, how are y'all?
Caleb, good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Coach. Coach, I know you've coached a lot of great receivers in your career, whether it be Plaxico Burris or Michael Clayton or Mari or Julio or Calvin Ridley. I want to know, is this the best group of receivers that you've had on one team?
Yeah, well, I would think, all things being considered, to have four guys of this caliber on the same team. And I'm not saying or comparing any one of these individuals to any of those individuals that you mentioned, because those guys were all fantastic players. But to have four guys that have the skill level, the talent level, the competitive spirit, not selfish, kind of hard-working, really do it for the team kind of guys that we have on this team. As a group, this is probably the best that I've ever had on the team collectively. So, and a really fine group of young men. I mean, they're great team guys. They're not selfish, which is really sort of almost unheard of for receivers because they're typically the guys that, they want the ball all the time, but they might play 60 plays in the game, and if they had 5 catches, that's a good day for a receiver. If you have 5 catches for 75 yards, that's a very productive day for a receiver, but that means there's 65 plays you didn't get the ball. All right, so, and that's what they're always upset about. These guys, you never hear it. They're all kind of happy for each other when they do well, and they all have ability to make plays, and I think it's an important part of what we do, that those guys continue to, play well for us. The quarterback can distribute the ball to all those guys because I think it can make us effective. Because right now, we don't have we haven't had the balance in the running game that we need on a consistent basis, and that's a work in progress, and we got to get that fixed.
How about John Mechie? Interesting story. Born in Taiwan, went to Ghana, moved to Canada, eventually found his way to New Jersey, and now in Tuscaloosa. A, when did you first hear about him? And B, how good can this young man be?
He's good. He's really a good player, and he's a very good special teams player too. And he's the same type of guy, smart guy, works hard, not selfish, not complaining, not, keeps things in perspective. One of the big issues we have, and people have heard me say this before, we have some guys that really, really try hard. And they try so hard that when they don't have success and things don't go the way they want them to, they get so frustrated and they become emotional. And then when they become emotional, they don't have a brain. They don't think, they don't make good choices and decisions, they get penalties. And it's really because they're trying so hard. So I always say, you want to play with emotion, but you don't want to be emotional, because that's when you make poor choices and decisions. And when you have guys like John Mechie, and he's very mature when it comes to that. He doesn't get frustrated. He doesn't make bad choices and decisions, and he's going to be a really good player for us.
Something that really impresses me about the wide receivers, this group in particular, is the way they block downfield. And Devonta Smith, in particular, I think I noticed him 3 times in the last game, just like that was a great block. Has he improved a lot in that area?
Well, he's always been really tough and always tried to block. I think he's gotten a little bigger and a little stronger, which has helped him, sort of be a little more physical. Not tougher, just a little more physical. He's always really tried to have the tenacity to be a good blocker. And, Henry Ruggs is a good blocker. He's got a lot of tenacity too. So hopefully those guys will all be able to continue to do that. Because when you have explosive plays, it usually comes because those guys are doing something special when it comes to blocking.
The coach has rejoined us, so why don't we go back to the Academy Sports and Outdoors hotline and hear from Nathan. He is in Haleyville, Alabama. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Good, David. How are you?
Okay, I just got a quick question. Every avid Bama fan remembers what happened the last time we played South Carolina and Columbia, 35-21 upset. And I was just wondering, did you use that this week to try to motivate the players, or does it do any good to bring up results of games that happened like 9 years ago? And I'll hang up and listen.
Well, I don't think our players on our team can relate to, what happened 9 years ago. For example, Tua was probably in the 6th grade, so maybe he doesn't remember, or that doesn't really sort of resonate, with him. But I think what you can do is you can use it as a point of reference for respecting South Carolina. It's a difficult place to play. It's an SEC game on the road. These guys do have a good team. And you can reference the fact that we'd won 19 games in a row, I think, when we went over there and played.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell the players, we got the lining kicked out of our britches, man. That's worse than getting kicked in the butt. That means you got kicked in the butt until you had no seam in your pants. That's really getting your ass kicked. All right, so they can relate to that. I think that part of it, and they got to understand what they're getting into, so they can stay focused on what's in front of them and focus on the right things when it comes to being able to execute, and sort of not getting hung up on external factors that really aren't going to have any impact on the outcome of the game.
Trent has been waiting on the phone line for a while down in Destin, Florida. Trent, welcome into the Nick Saban Show.
Hey, how's it going today, Coach?
Good, Trent. How are you?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Yeah, hey, I wanted to know how the week of preparation has been, and what's the focus like of the team this week?
I think it's been better. I think that we practiced outside on Monday and Tuesday, and I think those days are really, really difficult for the players to sustain the whole practice. I think they come out there with the idea that, we're going to be focused, and they get kind of worn down a little bit. But on Wednesday and Thursday, we practiced inside to try to get them to recover a little bit, and I thought the focus was a lot better. But as you would probably imagine, and I don't know where you work or what team you're involved with, but, you have some people that are always focused and always, sort of paying attention to detail and doing things the right way. And then you've got other guys who, really struggle, right, to stay focused and get really upset about all the wrong things because any little thing happens in their day or whatever, they're kind of upsetting the apple cart and not really staying focused on what's in front of them. So, you got varying guys that practice good, but I think one thing is very apparent. All right, you play like you practice. I know that's an old-fashioned statement that we all say, but, I kind of point that out to the players. The guys that practice well during the course of the week and prepare well, that carries over right into the games. And the guys that don't do that and aren't very focused and don't prepare well, they make more mistakes in the game, and they're not creating great value for themselves, when they do that. So, but it's been good overall this week, and I hope it'll carry over and we'll play well in the game.
Trent, thank you for your call. And Coach, the clock on the wall says it is time for your final word this evening. Presented each week by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, I think this game is going to come down to will. I really do. It's not going to come down to, who has the most ability, who's the most. It's going to come down to what kind of will do you have to be able to sustain, to be able to execute for 60 minutes in the game, to be able to finish plays. It's going to be a difficult place to play from a crowd standpoint. It's going to be hot and all that stuff. So what kind of will do you have to overcome adversity, to stay focused on what's in front of you? Kevin Elko always sends me stuff every week, and I read this stuff, and it was a really, really interesting story. And, some of you probably remember David Wells, who was really, really
Sure.
a good pitcher, and was with the Yankees when they had some of their best teams back when Joe Torre was the manager. And, David Wells was on the mound, and he was pitching, and he was one of the most successful pitchers in the league. And some fan yelled out and said something like, "Your mother," whatever. So I don't want to say it. All right, so he got all upset about that because his mother had just passed away, and he was actually crying on the mound. And he gave up 4 runs in the first inning. And when he came in the dugout, Joe Torre went over to him and said, "You're a professional, and you let a drunk amateur take you out of your game. Shame on you because you couldn't stay focused on what was important, and you let that guy control who you are." No matter what he said. I don't care what he said. So sometimes you have to ignore things that are external to what you can control. All right, in other words, and I think that's really, really important, all right, when you go play on the road in the SEC, because it's always going to be loud. People are going to get on you. It's a tough environment, all right, to have to execute in. I mean, you got to go on silent count, foot count, guard tap in the center. I mean, all kinds of stuff to get the snap count right. I mean, we went to LSU last year. We had, 4 or 5 penalties in a row. We go right down the field the first play of the game. We get down there by the student section. We can't snap the ball. So we go from the 15-yard line to the 35-yard line on penalties because we can't get the ball snapped. All right, but you have to be able to persevere and have the will to overcome adversity and stay focused on what is in front of you. All right, but to finish the story about David Wells, after Joe Torre said that to him, he went and pitched 8 innings of no-hit ball.
Isn't that something?
Because he said, "I'm going to focus on one pitch at a time." All right, but that's really, really important to be able to do that. And, hey, we've had games. I mean, we went to Florida. We're playing in the swamp a few years ago. First play of the game, Dre Kirkpatrick gets beat for a touchdown. All right, we're behind, and we win the game 41-13 or something. Last year at Ole Miss, first play of the game, 75-yard touchdown. And then we won 65-7 or whatever. But if you have the right mentality when you play on the road and you can stay focused and overcome adversity, that's really, really important because you can't start reeling, all right, and let the emotion, which you have no control over. All right, and focus on the wrong things, and then you start playing poorly. So that's going to be a real key. It's always great when we have fans, when all these places that we go, when we have fans who are there to support us. I'm always nervous and anxious and shaking my leg on the bus, but when we get out of the bus and there's a bunch of folks there, when we get off the bus, it really makes me feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more at home, so we appreciate our fan support when we're on the road.
Indeed we do. And, Coach, you travel safely. We'll see you tomorrow night in Columbia.
All right, thanks, Eli.
Coach Nick Saban, Christopher Walsh, thank you, sir, and all the best to you and BamaCentral.com.